The crunch of snow beneath Jason's boots echoed through the quiet forest as he trudged up the narrow mountain path. Heavy flakes drifted down between towering pines, coating his jacket and backpack in a fresh layer of white. The setting sun cast long shadows across the pristine landscape, but he barely noticed the beauty surrounding him. His thoughts kept drifting back to the divorce papers sitting signed on his kitchen counter. "Happy New Year to me," he muttered, adjusting his pack. At 35, this wasn't how he had envisioned spending the holiday, but after Sarah left, the thought of another lonely evening in town was unbearable. At least his family's old hunting cabin offered solitude and peace. A sudden flash of blue-white light illuminated the forest, followed by a thunderous crack that sent snow cascading from nearby branches. Jason stumbled, shielding his eyes as something streaked across the darkening sky. A shooting star, maybe. No, it was moving too erratically, leaving a trail of sparks behind. The object disappeared behind a ridge about a quarter-mile ahead. What the heck? He quickened his pace, curiosity overriding caution. The cabin could wait. As he crested the ridge, his jaw dropped. A sleek silver vessel, about the size of a small bus, lay half buried in the snow, steam rising from its metallic surface. Definitely not a meteor. The craft's design was unlike anything he'd ever seen, all smooth curves and pulsing lights along its hull. "Holy cow," he breathed, creeping closer. "This can't be real." A panel on the ship's side suddenly slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Jason dove behind a fallen log, heart pounding as he peeked over the top. What emerged made him question his sanity. Tiny figures, no taller than a ruler, began floating down from the opening. Women. At least they appeared female in form, with delicate features and skin in various shades of blue and violet. They wore form-fitting suits that seemed to shimmer and pulse with their own inner light. 16 of them in total, moving with an otherworldly grace despite their miniature size. One figure stood out from the rest, her skin a deeper sapphire, with intricate markings swirling across her exposed arms and face. Her suit was more elaborate, with crystalline components that caught what little light remained. She carried herself with unmistakable authority as she surveyed their surroundings. Jason couldn't help but stare, entranced by their alien beauty. He shifted slightly for a better view, and a branch snapped beneath his boot with a sharp crack. Instantly, all 16 heads whipped toward his position. The leader barked something in a musical language he couldn't understand, and several of the others produced what looked unsettlingly like weapons. "Wait," Jason stood slowly, hands raised. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." The sapphire-skinned leader floated closer, though still maintaining a safe distance. Her eyes narrowed as she studied him, and when she spoke, her voice carried clearly despite her size. "Your assistance is neither required nor desired, giant," she said in perfect English, though with an accent he couldn't place. "Return to whatever settlement spawned you and forget what you've seen here." "Look, a storm's coming," Jason said, gesturing at the darkening sky. "A bad one. Your ship's damaged and the temperatures are dropping fast. You need shelter. We are quite capable of—" She was cut off by a violent gust of wind that nearly knocked her from the air. Several of her companions tumbled before regaining control. Jason took an instinctive step forward. "My cabin's less than a mile away. It's warm, safe, and private. Please, you won't survive out here tonight." The leader steadied herself, clearly torn between pride and practicality, as fat snowflakes began swirling around them. She conferred briefly with the others in their melodic language before turning back to him. "I am Lena," she said stiffly, "commander of this expedition. If we accept your offer, understand that any hostile action will be met with immediate and decisive force. I'm Jason, and I promise I just want to help," he smiled, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. "Though I should warn you, the cabin's a bit rustic." As if to emphasize his point, a thunderous crack of lightning split the sky, followed almost immediately by a deafening boom of thunder. Several of the alien women yelped in surprise. "Gather what you need," Lena commanded. Her crew quickly complied. "And you," she fixed Jason with a piercing stare, "will maintain a distance of no less than 10 feet from any of us at all times." "Yes, ma'am," Jason said, fighting back an inappropriate urge to salute. He watched as they retrieved several crystalline devices from their ship before sealing it again. The wind was picking up dramatically now, driving the snow horizontally. Jason pulled his coat tighter and gestured toward the trail. "This way, stay close. Visibility is going to get bad fast." As they set off through the deepening twilight, he couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet New Year's getaway had just become something far more interesting and potentially dangerous. He reminded himself, noting the weapons several of them still carried, trained in his direction. The storm howled around them as they made their way through the darkness, 16 tiny points of light following in his wake. Whatever happened next, Jason had a feeling this would be a New Year's Eve he'd never forget. The trek to the cabin proved more challenging than Jason anticipated. While he could push through the deepening snow, his tiny companions struggled against the increasing wind. Several times he had to stop and wait as they regrouped, their glowing forms barely visible through the thickening storm. "How much further?" Lena shouted over the wind, her voice barely carrying to him. She hovered near his shoulder, having reluctantly moved closer to communicate. Just ahead, Jason pointed to where the cabin's dark shape was emerging from the gloom, maybe 200 yards. One of the smaller aliens, her skin a pale lavender, suddenly tumbled backward in a particularly fierce gust. Without thinking, Jason reached out to catch her. Instantly, several weapons trained on him. "Stand down," Lena ordered, though her own hand hovered near what looked like a holstered pistol at her hip. The lavender-skinned woman steadied herself, shooting Jason a look that mixed fear with something that might have been gratitude. "Sorry," Jason said, withdrawing his hand. "Instinct." Lena studied him for a moment before nodding curtly. "Your assistance is noted. Now move." They finally reached the cabin's porch, just as the storm reached full fury. Jason fumbled with frozen fingers to unlock the door, very aware of 16 pairs of eyes watching his every move. The lock finally clicked and he pushed inside, fumbling for the light switch. Warm yellow light flooded the small space, revealing a simple but comfortable interior. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, while basic furniture, a couch, 2 chairs, and a small kitchen table filled the rest of the main room. A narrow hallway led to the bedroom and bathroom. "It's not much," Jason said, stamping snow from his boots, "but it's warm and dry." The aliens entered cautiously, weapons still ready as they conducted what appeared to be a tactical sweep of the space. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, suggesting military training. Jason tried not to take offense at being treated like a potential threat in his own cabin. "Set up containment protocols," Lena ordered. "Kira, begin environmental analysis. The rest of you establish a perimeter and evaluate potential exit routes." "You know," Jason said, moving to the fireplace, "I'm not actually planning to trap or hurt you." He began arranging logs and kindling, keeping his movement slow and deliberate. "Your intentions are irrelevant," Lena replied coolly. "Standard protocol must be followed." One of the other aliens, presumably Mira, was doing something with a crystalline device that created shimmering barriers across the windows and doors. Another was scanning the air with what looked like a highly advanced tablet. "Atmospheric composition within acceptable parameters," reported the one with the tablet. "Detecting elevated levels of carbon dioxide near the ceiling. Primitive combustion heating system. It's called a fireplace," Jason said. Striking a match, the kindling caught quickly, and soon a cheerful blaze was growing, and there's ventilation. He turned to find Lena hovering directly in front of his face, studying him intently. Up close, her beauty was even more striking. High cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes that seemed to shift between deep blue and violet, and intricate markings that followed the curve of her jaw. "You are not what we expected," she said finally. "Sorry to disappoint, that is not," she broke off, frowning. "You attempt humor in a serious situation. Better than panicking about the fact that I'm hosting a group of tiny alien women who might want to kill me," Jason replied with a slight smile. Something that might have been amusement flickered across her face before she could suppress it. "Your species was reported to be aggressive, primitive, and hostile to outsiders." "Well, you're not exactly being friendly yourself," Jason pointed out, standing to remove his wet coat. Several weapons instantly tracked his movement. He sighed. "Look, how about this? I'm going to make some coffee and heat up some soup. You're welcome to scan it or whatever makes you comfortable. Then maybe we can talk like reasonable beings instead of pointing guns at each other." Lena considered this for a long moment. Finally, she made a gesture, and her companions lowered their weapons, though they remained watchfully alert. "Acceptable," she said, "but be aware that any sudden moves will be met with immediate incapacitation." Noted, Jason moved to the small kitchen area, very aware of the multiple sets of eyes tracking him. "So come here often?" This time he definitely saw Lena's lips twitch. Progress, he thought. Even if they might still kill him, at least they might do it with a sense of humor. As Jason busied himself in the kitchen, the alien women began establishing what appeared to be a miniature command center on his coffee table. Crystalline devices projected holographic displays into the air, showing what looked like damage assessments of their ship and weather patterns. "Your atmospheric disturbance has damaged our primary propulsion matrix," Lena explained, hovering near the coffee maker as Jason worked. "Repairs will take approximately 48 of your Earth hours." "Just my luck," Jason muttered. "First New Year's alone after the divorce, and I end up in a blizzard with invasion forces." Lena's head snapped up. "How did you know our mission parameters?" "Lucky guess," Jason said dryly, pouring the coffee. "Why else would advanced aliens be sneaking around in tiny form?" He set a small saucer of coffee on the table as a peace offering. Several of the aliens immediately began scanning it with their devices. "No known toxins detected," reported one with silvery blue skin, though the chemical composition is interesting. Lena approached the saucer cautiously and dipped a finger in the dark liquid. Her eyes widened slightly as she tasted it. "This is not unpleasant," she admitted. "High praise," Jason chuckled, settling into his armchair, maintaining the agreed-upon distance. "So, want to tell me why you're really here?" The storm howled outside as Lena seemed to wage an internal debate. Finally, she sighed. "Our initial report suggested Earth would be suitable for colonization," she said carefully. "Our own world faces certain challenges." "You mean you're dying out?" Jason said quietly. Lena's shoulders tensed. "Our situation is complex. And you thought you could just show up and take over? Our technology allows us to influence larger species," she said, "or it should have. You are proving surprisingly resistant to our mind control." Jason laughed, then stopped when he saw her expression. "Wait. Seriously, your mental patterns are unusual," she admitted. "Most species are easily suggestible to our influence. You seem to possess natural shields." "Or maybe," Jason suggested, "you're finding out we're not as primitive as you thought." Before Lena could respond, one of her crew members called out in alarm. The holographic displays flickered with new data. "Commander, the storm is intensifying beyond predicted parameters. The ship's protective fields are failing." Lena darted to the displays, barking orders in their musical language. Jason moved to the window, brushing aside the shimmering barrier to peer out. The wind was now strong enough to bend tree trunks, and the snow was so thick he could barely see 10 feet. "Your vessel won't survive this," he said grimly, "not without better shelter." Lena's face showed real concern for the first time. "If we lose the ship, we lose our only way home." Jason ran a hand through his hair, knowing he was probably going to regret what he was about to say. "I have a garage," he offered. "It's not huge, but it's insulated. If we work together, we might be able to get your ship there before the storm tears it apart." Lena stared at him for a long moment. "Why would you help us? We just admitted to planning your planet's conquest." "Because it's the right thing to do," Jason said simply. "And because maybe if we show you some humanity, you might realize we're worth getting to know instead of trying to control." Something shifted in Lena's expression, surprise, respect, and perhaps a hint of something else. "Commander," one of her crew spoke up, "we're running out of time." Lena straightened, every inch the leader again. "Very well, we accept your assistance, Jason. But know that this changes nothing about our mission." "We'll see," Jason said, already pulling his coat back on. "First rule of Earth, never say never." As they prepared to brave the storm again, Jason couldn't help but smile. Here he was on New Year's Eve about to help rescue a spaceship with a group of tiny alien women who'd planned to conquer his planet. Sarah had always said he needed to get out more. Little did he know this was just the beginning of a night that would change not just his life, but potentially the fate of 2 worlds. Moving the ship through the blizzard had been a nightmare, but they'd managed it. Now, 3 hours into the new year, Jason's garage had been transformed into something out of a sci-fi movie. The tiny alien vessel hummed with energy as Lena's crew worked on repairs, their crystalline tools casting prismatic patterns across the walls. "Hand me that wrench, would you?" Jason called from where he was reinforcing the garage door against the storm. He'd learned some of their names by now. Mira, the tech specialist with lavender skin, Kira, their environmental expert, and Vinna, whose midnight blue coloring made her nearly invisible in shadows. Lena herself floated the wrench over, her expression caught between amusement and exasperation. "This primitive tool seems hardly adequate." "Hey, it's gotten me through plenty of repairs," Jason defended, tightening the last bolt. "Not all of us have fancy space technology." "Clearly," Lena said, but there was less bite in her tone than earlier. She'd been watching him work with what seemed like genuine curiosity. "Though your adaptability is noteworthy." "Thanks, I think." Jason wiped his hands on his jeans. So while your crew works on the ship, want to come inside? I could use some help with something." Lena hesitated, then nodded to her second-in-command. "Mira, maintain oversight of repairs. Alert me to any changes." Back in the cabin, Jason pulled a dusty box from a closet. "Since you're stuck here for New Year's, might as well make it festive." "Festive?" Lena's brow furrowed as he opened the box, revealing tangled strings of lights and old ornaments. "Earth tradition," Jason explained, beginning to untangle the lights. "We decorate for holidays, especially New Year's. This serves what purpose? Fun, joy, making things pretty." Jason shrugged. "Not everything needs a tactical advantage, you know." Lena's expression suggested she strongly disagreed, but she helped anyway, her tiny form darting between strands of lights as they worked to arrange them. "Your species is puzzling," she said after a while. "You possess the capacity for great destruction, yet you create things of such delicacy." She held up a fragile glass ornament, studying how it caught the light. "We contain multitudes," Jason quoted at her. Questioning look, he added, "Earth poet Walt Whitman." "You appreciate poetry now?" She looked genuinely surprised. Among other things, Jason hung another strand of lights. "I used to teach literature before," he trailed off, the familiar ache of his divorce surfacing. "Before life reminded me nothing lasts forever." He forced a smile. "Even marriages." Lena was quiet for a moment. "On our world, partnerships are carefully calculated for optimal genetic and social compatibility." "Sounds romantic," Jason said dryly. "It is efficient," but something in her tone suggested doubt. As they worked, more of Lena's crew filtered in from the garage, drawn by curiosity. Soon the cabin was filled with tiny aliens asking questions about Earth traditions, examining decorations with scientific interest, and occasionally offering improvements using their technology. "Your lights are inefficient," Mira declared, doing something with a crystal that made the strands pulse with ethereal colors. "Much better, show off," Jason laughed. But he had to admit the effect was stunning. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the cabin had taken on a magical quality. Holographic snowflakes danced through the air, merging with the enhanced Christmas lights to create patterns that seemed to shift and flow like the aurora borealis. "This is not unpleasant," Lena admitted, watching her crew's obvious enjoyment. Some had even started humming their natural harmonics, creating haunting melodies. "High praise indeed," Jason teased. "Want to try another Earth tradition?" He moved to the kitchen and began gathering ingredients. Lena followed, curious. "Hot chocolate," he explained, "though I'll have to figure out the proportions for your size. We can adjust the molecular structure," she offered, pulling out one of her devices. Working together, they managed to create tiny cups of perfectly sized hot chocolate for the crew. The looks of surprise and delight on their faces as they tasted it made something warm bloom in Jason's chest. "Your world," Lena said suddenly, her voice quiet, "it has such abundance, such life." She stared into her miniature cup. "Ours is dying." Jason set down the pot he was cleaning. "What do you mean? Our sun is failing. Centuries of advanced civilization have stripped our resources. We have perhaps a decade before." She shook her head. "The mission to Earth was not just about conquest, it was survival." "Why didn't you just ask for help?" Lena's laugh was bitter. "Would your leaders have welcomed us, a technologically superior species, asking for sanctuary?" "Some would have," Jason said. "Maybe enough." Before Lena could respond, a massive gust of wind rattled the cabin. One of the windows burst open, sending Arctic air howling through the room. Several of the smaller aliens were caught in the blast, tumbling through the air. Jason lunged for the window, fighting against the wind to close it. Through the swirling snow, he saw Lena get slammed against the outer wall, her tiny form going still. Without thinking, he reached out through the window. Cold instantly bit into his exposed skin, but his fingers closed carefully around Lena's unconscious form. He pulled her inside just as another gust threatened to tear the window from his grasp. "Commander!" Several crew members rushed forward as Jason carefully cradled Lena in his palm. She was breathing, but her skin had taken on a darker, worrying shade of blue. "She's freezing," Jason said. Already moving toward the fireplace, he cupped his other hand over her, trying to share what warmth he could. "What do you need? How can I help?" The crew sprang into action, pulling out medical devices and speaking rapidly in their language. Jason held perfectly still as they worked, fear gripping his heart. When had he started caring so much about these tiny invaders? Slowly, Lena's color began to return to normal. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing first on her crew, then on Jason's worried face above her. "You saved me," she said, voice weak but clear. "Don't sound so surprised," Jason tried to joke, relief making him lightheaded. "Some of us primitives have good instincts." Lena's hand, impossibly small, touched his palm. "Perhaps we have much to learn from each other." Around them, the storm began to ease, as if nature itself was acknowledging a shift in the universe. In his hands, a tiny alien commander looked up at a human with new eyes, while outside the first minutes of a new year ticked quietly by. The next few hours transformed the cabin into an otherworldly fusion of Earth and alien traditions. Lena's crew, their initial hostility melting away, began sharing stories of their own world celebrations. Their voices created harmonies that seemed to dance with the enhanced lights, turning simple holiday songs into something ethereal. "So what's this called again?" Lena asked, perched on the rim of Jason's coffee mug. She'd refused to leave his immediate vicinity since the window incident, claiming it was tactical positioning. "Eggnog," Jason replied, taking a careful sip around her. "Though your crew's modifications make it taste better than any I've had before. We merely optimized the molecular structure," Mira called from where she was examining his old record player. "Your Earth beverages are fascinating." Jason watched as several of the aliens worked to restore the ancient player, their crystalline tools casting rainbow reflections across its surface. "You don't have to fix that, it hasn't worked in years. Consider it repayment," Lena said softly. "For earlier, you don't owe me anything." "Perhaps not," she studied him with those color-shifting eyes, "but we want to. Is that not also an Earth tradition, giving gifts?" Before Jason could respond, music filled the cabin. Not the scratchy sound he remembered, but crystal-clear notes that seemed to float in the air. The aliens had somehow not just fixed the player but enhanced it, creating a three-dimensional soundscape that made the music feel alive. "This was Sarah's favorite," Jason said without thinking, recognizing the old jazz standard she always. "Your former mate?" Lena's tone was carefully neutral. "Yeah," Jason leaned back, memories washing over him. "She said I spent too much time living in books, not enough in the real world. Guess hiding in a cabin during New Year's proved her right. And yet," Lena gestured at the transformed space around them, "here you are hosting beings from another world. Perhaps your appreciation for stories prepared you for extraordinary reality." Jason laughed. "That's a generous way to look at it. Tell me about your world," he said after a moment. "The real story, not the invasion briefing version." Lena was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she began to speak, her voice taking on a melodic quality that reminded him of distant stars. "We were once like you, full of life, of passion, of chaos. Our technology advanced faster than our wisdom. We reached for the stars before learning to properly care for our own world." She closed her eyes. "Now our cities are perfect, efficient, and dying. Our children are born into a world of crystal and steel, never knowing the feel of wind or rain. That's why you came, as you are now, this size." "Our natural form," she admitted. "We evolved this way, developing technology to interact with larger species over generations. We forgot how to live in harmony with our world's other creatures. We conquered them instead, rebuilt everything to our scale." Now she gestured to herself. "We are trapped in our own perfection, but Earth is beautiful chaos." Lena's eyes shone with something like longing. "Your species still remembers how to coexist, however imperfectly. We thought we could take that, control it. We never considered that we might have something to teach you, that we might have something to learn," she corrected. Then added more quietly, "that I might have something to learn." The music swelled around them, and Jason noticed other crew members had stopped their work to listen. Some were swaying gently to the rhythm, their natural bioluminescence pulsing in time with the notes. "Dance with me." The words left his mouth before he could think better of them. Lena blinked in surprise. "I don't understand." Like this, Jason carefully extended his hand palm up. After a moment's hesitation, Lena stepped onto it. He lifted her slowly, keeping his movements gentle as he swayed to the music. Her tiny form began to move in response, floating just above his palm as they created their own impossible waltz. Around them, other crew members started joining in, creating a surreal ballet of tiny glowing forms dancing through the air to Earth jazz. Even Mira, usually focused entirely on technology, was attempting to teach some of the others what looked like formal court dances from their world. "Your heart rate has increased," Lena observed, still moving in perfect sync with Jason's palm. "Scientific observation or personal interest?" he teased. A deeper blue tinted her cheeks, both, perhaps. The moment was interrupted by urgent beeping from one of their devices. Kira darted over to check it, her expression growing concerned. "Commander, the storm is shifting. There's a secondary front approaching stronger than the first." Lena immediately switched back to commander mode, though she remained on Jason's palm. "Time estimate 2 hours maximum." "The ship's repairs aren't complete," Mira finished, joining them. "We need at least 6 more hours for critical systems." "How bad is this storm going to be?" Jason asked. Kira projected a holographic weather map into the air. The swirling patterns looked decidedly unfriendly. "Based on our readings, significantly worse than the current system. The temperature drop alone could kill us," Lena finished bluntly. "Our environmental suits aren't designed for such extreme conditions." Jason studied the projection. "The garage isn't insulated enough for those temperatures. You'll need to move the ship. Moving it now, partially repaired, would be catastrophic," Mira argued. "Then don't move it." Jason set Lena down carefully on the coffee table. "Move your crew. The cabin has better insulation, a backup generator, and the fireplace. We can wait out the storm here." "And the ship?" Lena's expression was unreadable. "I've got some heavy tarps, thermal blankets. If we work together, we might be able to rig up enough protection to keep it from taking damage." The aliens exchanged looks, having one of their silent communications. Finally, Lena nodded. "Organize the equipment transfer," she ordered. "Essential repairs only. Everything else can wait until the storm passes." The next hour was organized chaos as the tiny crew efficiently relocated their command center to Jason's living room. He helped where he could, mainly by carrying larger equipment pieces and following their precise instructions for protecting the ship. As they worked, Lena stayed close, directing her crew while occasionally stealing glances at him when she thought he wasn't looking. There was something different in her gaze now, less analytical, more personal. "You know," Jason said as they finished securing the last tarp, "for someone planning to conquer my planet, you seem pretty okay with taking orders from a primitive." "I am not taking orders," Lena corrected primly. "I am accepting tactical suggestions from a native expert. Is that what we're calling it? Would you prefer collaborative strategic planning?" Jason grinned. "I prefer you just admit you're starting to like us primitives. That would be—" Lena paused, then surprised him with a small smile of her own. "Tactically unwise to admit." They made it back inside just as the wind began to pick up again. The cabin had been transformed into something between a command center and a cozy holiday retreat. Holographic displays shared space with twinkling lights, while alien technology hummed alongside the crackling fireplace. As the storm raged outside, Jason watched Lena organizing her crew's safety protocols, while simultaneously admiring the way his mother's old glass ornaments caught the light. Something had shifted between them, between all of them. During these strange hours, these beings had come to conquer but instead found themselves discovering the simple joys of hot chocolate, holiday lights, and jazz music. And Jason, who had come to the cabin to escape humanity, found himself teaching aliens about the best parts of being human. The irony wasn't lost on him. Neither was the way his heart jumped whenever Lena's crystalline laugh joined the music still playing softly in the background. The storm peaked at midnight, transforming the forest outside into a howling void of white. Inside the cabin, however, a different kind of magic was taking place. The aliens' technology had merged with Jason's holiday decorations to create something entirely new. Crystalline formations that caught and amplified the light, sending rainbow cascades dancing across the walls while holographic snowflakes drifted through the air. 30 seconds until Earth's arbitrary temporal designation, Mira announced, monitoring one of their precise chronometers. "New Year's," Jason corrected with a smile. "And it's not arbitrary, it's tradition." "Like your hot chocolate?" Lena asked from her perch on his shoulder, where she'd claimed a tactical observation position hours ago. "Exactly. Speaking of which," Jason carefully lifted a tiny cup he had prepared. "Earth tradition says we toast at midnight." The crew had gathered around the main room, their bioluminescence creating a soft glow that complemented the holiday lights. Even the most serious among them had relaxed, caught up in the strange beauty of this cultural fusion. 10 seconds, Kira called out. Lena stood on Jason's shoulder, her tiny hand resting against his neck. He could feel her pulse racing, matching his own. 5, Jason. Lena's voice was barely audible above the countdown. "I need to tell you something. 4, this mission, my people. 3, we were wrong. 2, about Earth, about humans, about you." The crew erupted in a harmonious cheer that seemed to make the very air vibrate. but Jason barely noticed because Lena had launched herself from his shoulder, hovering directly in front of his face. "Our studies suggested humans were primitive, violent, unworthy of consideration," she said, her eyes shifting through shades of violet and blue. "But you showed me more kindness as an enemy than I've known from allies. You saved me, protected my crew, asked for nothing in return." "Well, I did get some pretty amazing hot chocolate upgrades," Jason joked, his heart hammering. "Be serious for once," Lena chided, but her smile was fond. "I came to conquer your world, and instead I find myself conquered." She moved closer, close enough that he could see the intricate pattern swirling beneath her skin. "By your ridiculous traditions, your inefficient methods, your completely illogical ability to care about beings who threatened your very existence." Behind them, the crew had gone silent, watching this moment unfold with varying degrees of shock and fascination. "Commander," Mira stepped forward. "The mission parameters are changing," Lena declared, never taking her eyes off Jason. "We came seeking conquest because we thought it our only option, but there are other ways, better ways." "What are you saying?" Jason asked, barely daring to breathe. "I'm saying," Lena took a deep breath, "I'm saying that perhaps instead of taking Earth by force, we should consider diplomatic relations." A murmur ran through the crew. "And what would these diplomatic relations look like?" Jason asked, his voice rough. "That depends." Lena moved even closer on whether Earth's representative would be willing to negotiate. "Earth's representative? Well, you did save my life. That makes you at least a minor diplomatic figure, doesn't it?" Jason laughed. "I think that's stretching international law a bit." Then perhaps, Lena's voice softened, perhaps we could start with personal negotiations. Before Jason could respond, she closed the final distance between them and pressed her tiny lips to his. The kiss was impossible, ridiculous, completely impractical, and absolutely perfect. When they parted, the crew erupted into chaos. Some were cheering, others were frantically consulting rulebooks, and Mira appeared to be winning several bets. "Commander," Kira called out suddenly. "The storm, it's clearing." They all turned to the windows, where the swirling white was indeed beginning to thin, revealing stars twinkling in the crystal-clear sky. "The ship repairs should be complete," Mira reported. "We can leave within the hour." "Leave?" Jason's heart sank. "Some of us must," Lena said. "Our world needs to know there's hope, not through conquest, but through cooperation." She looked up at him. "But if you're willing, I'd like to stay to continue our diplomatic discussions." The first rays of dawn painted the snow-covered forest in shades of gold and rose. Outside Jason's cabin, 16 tiny figures stood beside their repaired ship, its silver hull gleaming in the early morning light. "You're sure about this?" Mira asked Lena for the 10th time. "Staying behind goes against every protocol." "Since when have protocols accounted for falling in love with a giant?" Lena responded, her smile soft but determined. "Besides, someone needs to establish proper diplomatic relations. Is that what we're calling it now?" Jason teased, crouching beside them. "Among other things." Lena flew up to his shoulder, her favorite perch he'd noticed. The crew had spent the last hour transferring necessary equipment into the cabin and preparing for departure. The ship hummed with energy, ready for its journey home. "Our council will need convincing," Kira warned. "Not everyone will accept this new direction easily." "Then convince them," Lena said. "Show them what we learned here, that strength isn't always about power or control. Sometimes it's about having the courage to change." One by one, the crew members approached to say their goodbyes. Even the most skeptical among them had been transformed by their night of Earth traditions and unexpected friendship. "Try not to break our commander," Mira said to Jason with a knowing smirk. "She's surprisingly fragile for someone so stubborn." "I heard that," Lena called down. The ship's entry portal opened with a soft hiss, and the crew began boarding, each giving one last look at their commander and the human who had changed everything. "We'll return," Kira promised, "with proper diplomatic documentation this time." "And more of that hot chocolate substance," another crew member added as the ship's engines powered up, creating a gentle hum that vibrated through the crisp morning air. Jason felt Lena's tiny hand press against his neck. "Having second thoughts?" he asked softly. "About staying with a primitive giant who thinks decorative lights are the height of technology?" She pretended to consider it. "Perhaps a few. Well, I do have a lot to learn about advanced alien civilizations, and I," Lena said, "have much to learn about the beauty of imperfection." The ship rose silently into the air, its hull catching the sunrise in a blaze of color. The crew gave one final salute before the vessel shot upward, disappearing into the morning sky with nothing but a faint shimmer to mark its passage. "So," Jason said after a moment, What does one do with a tiny alien girlfriend? Lena's nose wrinkled adorably. Such an inefficient term. I prefer interstellar diplomatic liaison. That's a mouthful. Then perhaps you should find a better use for your mouth, she suggested, floating in front of his face with a mischievous glint in her color-shifting eyes. As they kissed in the golden light of the New Year's first dawn, Jason marveled at how life could change so completely in a single night. He'd come to this cabin running away from his past, only to literally have the future fall from the sky. "Happy New Year," he whispered against Lena's tiny lips. "Indeed," she agreed, "though I believe Earth has many more traditions you need to teach me about." "We've got time," Jason said, carefully cradling her as they headed back to the cabin. All the time in the world. Behind them, their footprints in the snow told the story. One set of boots, and beside them, tiny impressions that could easily be mistaken for fairy tracks. Above, the morning star twinkled like a promise. While inside the cabin, alien technology hummed alongside the crackling fireplace, creating a harmony all its own. It wasn't the New Year's either of them had planned, but sometimes the best adventures come in the smallest packages, and sometimes love truly does conquer all, even if it needs a bit of advanced alien technology to help it along. Epilogue. 6 months later, June 2025, Jason sat on his cabin's porch, watching the summer sunset paint the sky in familiar shades of violet and blue, colors that now always reminded him of Lena. She was inside, coordinating with her former crew via their advanced communication systems. The diplomatic missions had been more successful than anyone could have imagined. Earth's first interstellar embassy opens next month, Lena announced, flying out to join him. "Though I still think letting the UN handle negotiations is inefficient. More efficient than letting one cabin-dwelling human make decisions for the whole planet," Jason chuckled. "You did quite well with your first alien invasion," she teased, settling on his shoulder. The sound of approaching vehicles made them both look up. More headlights were winding up the forest road. Another group of scientists and diplomats coming to consult with Earth's first and tiniest alien ambassador. "Ready to change the world again?" Jason asked. Lena's tiny hand pressed against his neck. "With you always." To all our readers celebrating the arrival of 2025, may your new year be filled with wonder and possibility. Remember that the greatest adventures often come in unexpected packages, and that love truly knows no boundaries, not even interstellar ones. From our tiny cabin in the woods to wherever you may be, we wish you a year of joy, discovery, and maybe even a little magic. Happy New Year 2025. Love, Jason and Lena, and the entire diplomatic mission of Mini Alliance. P.S. Lena insists I add that Earth's hot chocolate remains unmatched across known space. Some traditions, it seems, are universal.